Thank you very much, and to our panelists today. So I'm just going to start by asking each of you, just in a couple of sentences, just to introduce where you've come to on this topic today.
Hi, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here another year, and thanks to Dario for his amazing work and inviting me. My name is Loucif. I head up the digital healthcare at Jazz Pharma. Normally, I work specifically with medical. Now I move to broader scope with R&D included medical. And insights management is extremely important, especially the mix between digital implementation, AI, and insights management. That's the reason I am happy to have these discussions with you all.
Thank you, Georgios.
Thank you, Vic. So I'm Georgios Tramountanis, currently with Takeda. And I actually started my career as a clinical research associate at the local level, and then had multiple roles at the international, at global level for medical affairs. And we know the impact of medical affairs is always a challenge, and insight generation is a very important topic. So it's a pleasure to be able to discuss this today.
Thank you. Maja.
And I'm Maja Galic. Some of you heard me speak yesterday. I lead Global Medical Affairs Operations and Excellence. Very broad scope, but my team is very much evolving in the direction of finding more digital and automated solutions to problems like insights generation. So this is one of our biggest initiatives, actually, for the past 2 years to get this up and running. So excited to talk about it.
Thank you. And my name's Vic Ho, and I've worked in medical affairs for the last 20 years. I've been involved in the creation of insights processes at 3 different pharmaceutical companies during that time, but I now work as the medical lead for solutions in Sorcero, and we're helping companies to use responsible AI, enabling their practices and insights flow. So what we want to talk on this panel about is that topic of medical insights management. And what we're finding is that the use of AI with humans is more powerful than either one of those things alone. And we heard yesterday from a panel of HCPs very clearly saying, include me. And to do that, we need to be able to bring their insight about their patients into our strategy. We also heard yesterday and this morning about how achieving patient outcomes is a cross-functional effort. So even though we have a panel of just medical affairs here, what we want to talk about is how are we unlocking all of that information from all of the different data sources that medical affairs have access to in order to be part of that conversation in a robust way. And how do we move from that old way of manual processing of insights into this new space of using the technology? So we will talk about bringing insight in at the beginning, the start of the process, the sharing and the analytics around insight management, and also how do we keep people motivated to keep bringing insight in and ultimately to act upon it. So I'm going to start with you, Georgios. As we introduce more technology into this space, what should we look out for to avoid the obstacles at the start of that insights process of gathering insight?
Thank you, Vic. Yes, and I think before I start, I want to take a moment to make a distinction between the early part of this process and the latter part. And I think when we intake the information, I would like to call that an observation. And then at the end of the process, where we generate this golden nugget, is truly the insight that we generate. And I think in medical affairs, we often refer to medical insights as the most valuable resource we generate in the organization. And the most impactful insights are not generated by drop-down menus or tick boxes, forms, and surveys, are actually generated by real conversations that we have with our customers through field interactions and scientific exchanges. And the best way to capture this is using free text that will enable us to capture the content, the issues, and the unmet need of the healthcare professional in a very true and authentic way. And we know, we heard from our DOLs and KOLs yesterday that authenticity is a critical element of their interaction with pharma. And I think the obstacle we faced in the past is that free text generates high volumes of data, but also high variability. And we were very resource constrained to be able to analyze them quickly and efficiently. So it would take months to analyze those huge Excel tables, and we would surface insights to our teams maybe 3-5 months later, and only 10% of them will actually bring value. And so what we did is ask our teams, our field teams, our medical teams, to not capture observation, but to capture insights at the intake level. And those created a huge bias and lead us to miss a lot of information. So I think technology now brings us the opportunity to go back and capture these observations in free text. And that way, we'll bring the value of medical affairs even further, because with, for example, AI and NLP technologies, we'll be able to identify patterns, emerging trends, or knowledge gaps much faster and effectively, whereas using Gen AI technology will give us a unique opportunity to interact and interrogate the data in a conversational way. And I think that would definitely be a game changer, as will allow us, from a medical affairs perspective, first of all, to listen to our customers better, but also be able to react to the changing environment much faster than before. So I think by bringing together the depth of the human interaction and conversation with the appropriate technology, it will really lead us to identify those insights and transform them into strategic intelligence. An intelligence that will help us shape evidence generation, will help us generate and improve our scientific communications, create service-driven HCP engagement, and actually, at the end, shape healthcare and patients' care.
Thank you. And you know, it is also that piece of one of the barriers is people feel that they have to craft the perfect insight as they type it into their free text box. But with the AI, as you mentioned, because it can read a far bigger volume of text than a human can in that old world of manual processing, they can be more verbose and allow the AI to pick out the threads and the patterns. And that's one of those speed and efficiency pieces, absolutely. So, Loucif, what are you seeing that is working well to increase collaboration in insight sharing and innovation in analytics?
Thanks, Vic. I think just to make a first statement, cross-functions collaboration is not a challenge just with the insights. It's like a bigger challenge with different topics within the pharma and other companies. I think the strategy in terms of the cross-functions collaboration, rather than making like a big change with one target, it's preferred to go for small actions with different targets. The first one is the processes. To stop with isolated initiatives with different teams, to centralize one vision for the insights management. This is extremely important to maintain this vision for one company, one insight. This is in terms of the processes, the first target. And the second target is the tools. We need to move from different tools with different teams, non-connected tools, to one ecosystem. I think technology is extremely important, and moving from isolated tools with the different teams to one ecosystem with one centralized oversight is extremely important. And the third one is technology. Technology may do a lot for us in terms of the insights management in general at the different levels. The first one, insights gathering, the use of technology for the field, for the different tools where we can find new resources of the insights. And the second one is in terms of the insight triage and insight analysis. You know, the time needed now to analyze the insight is approximately between 50 to 70% of our time and expert time to analyze the insights. I think technology may help in terms of the analysis of the insights. And the last step is in terms of the translation of the insights into actions. Unfortunately, we forgot a lot this translation of the insights to actions. And the goal of the insight is to impact the strategy and to come with the actions, not to stop at the insights management level. I think this is extremely important. And technology may certainly help at different levels.
Yeah, and it's almost as if people are exhausted by the point that they find the actionable insight and don't have the energy left to act upon it. So I think that's where this human piece comes in really nicely. And Maja, what have you found keeps teams motivated to carry on driving collection of insight, but ultimately also following through and taking that action?
Thanks for that question. But I would like to just begin by saying, like, how much I struggle with the term insight. I really, really struggle with it. I am in full disagreement that an opinion of N equals 1, an MSL having a conversation with their favourite KOL, is the same thing as an insight. It's an observation, as we heard earlier, or an opinion at best. Yes, we really enjoyed your nice latest clinical data. Like, how helpful is that? So I think the only way that we can actually realize and uncover those insights, particularly the actionable ones, is by cross-validating that data with other data sources. So there's no way you can just say that what MSLs are saying in the field is insightful and we should act upon it. I'm not suggesting that they're not doing a good job, and they obviously play a really important role in the industry, but why are we ignoring other data sources? And the biggest one, the most obvious one, is medical information. Huge amounts of data are coming in-house every single day. We just heard about the importance of the voice of the patient. Patients are dialing in. Everybody, all the customers. So why is this kind of seemingly being ignored when we speak about insights? Not to undermine any of my dear panelists up here, but I just feel like, we need to be looking at multiple sources of data. And just as an example, this is something that we're focusing on at Teva right now, where we're pulling data from all of our systems, not just CRM, not only MedInfo, we're also then looking at unstructured data in terms of reports, advisory board output, and we're integrating all of that data into a data lake. From there, we can apply advanced analytical tools, natural language processing, and then we can uncover those real meaningful insights. Yeah, that MSL was right what they said, because we're also seeing patients saying the same thing. And we had a very concrete example of that where we had reports of one of our sustained release medications being crushed. We're like, okay, well, that's not ideal. But then when we saw it coming through MedInfo as well, we're like, oh shit, maybe that's something we need to do something with. So then we involved other cross-functional stakeholders like clinical development, pharmacovigilance, because once you crush a sustained release tablet, you might have a problem on your hands. You might be, you might be ending up with a lot of adverse events, PK levels, not what we thought. Do we need to do a study? Do we need to look at this? That's an actionable insight, and that maybe would never have been uncovered if it was just a sporadic here and there interaction by an MSL with, N of 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. So it needs to be bigger. The data set needs to be bigger. Of course, we need to predefine what we want to look for, not just having a random report of discussions with KOLs. We need to be very clear what it is that we're interested in seeing insights for all of our products. And we also need to build models that are clever enough that they'll uncover things we didn't even know. Like, ooh, that's bubbling up. We didn't even know about it. So these are all important considerations as we start to build out insights beyond just these, interactions that we capture in CRMs. So to answer your question, a really long answer to your question, but it's really then the buy-in that we're getting and we're finding that it's working better is indeed by doing that, because in the past when we would just share insight reports from MSLs, people may or may not open that email. Maybe it was discussed in the medical strategic team meetings and then maybe nothing was done with it. But now it's getting more traction, but it's becoming more and more important that we have a business process around that again, it's not just a nice to have, we do nothing with it, that it really does inform our medical strategy in a continual fashion, that we take on board these insights. And not only that, are we even circling back to the customers that gave that insight and letting them know if we did something with it? I think that's also part of the whole relationship building and closing the circle in order to further strengthen that relationship. They feel like, oh, I was really heard, and the company did something about what I told them, then it all just becomes much more meaningful and, you know, much more easy to embrace, and ultimately just make us better at the ultimate goal, which is helping the patients. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And we're certainly seeing that when people have access to the analytics layer that allows them to see all of those data sources together, including their own insight that they brought in if they're a member of field medical, it shows them how that data is being used. It closes that loop,
Yeah.
at least certainly for the internal communication. And then when they move it to action and they see the steps that have been taken as a result of the action, they're able to even further close the loop with their HCPs back in those interactions. So it is that function of the technology is now not just a recording tool. It's something that gives them instant value to instantly analyze their own insight and drives that excitement of seeing how it's changing patients' lives.
Yep.
So we, just briefly, I think, and we'll start with you, Loucif, are there things from the traditional insights process that we should keep that's working well? And what are some of the things that we could throw away?
I think we need to keep the insights specific to the teams, to medical, to commercial. We need the connection, we need one vision for the company, but we need to keep specificities. Even we have the same vision, we do have different strategies. To keep the specificities per function is extremely important. And then technology, to start thinking about technology to help us in terms of the innovation, not just improving the existing processes and how we collect and triage the insights.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of the catalyzing how we move from that old manual process and working with stakeholders that way, what are the things that you find are helping, Georgios?
Yeah, I think definitely the business process and buy-in and seeing that loop closing is very critical. But I think another catalyst is moving through the obstacles of compliance and legal that we face through insight collection analysis and then how to communicate that to the wider audience. And I think it's very important for us as an organization to challenge those, let's say, orthodoxies that were established maybe 3-4 years ago by an interpretation of the risk that was delivered by a group or a single person. I think it's good to go through and challenge those, identify what is the risk, and revisit that decision that was made in the past of, is this risk still valid? Or, for example, can we use technology to minimize it? Can we use analysis of text quickly to identify if language that is not appropriate is being used? Can we mitigate that risk at the insight, at the observation intake point, or even at the insight generation? And then how can we then communicate the aggregate of all those insights together? To your point, field medical is one single point in this whole environment. We need medical information generated insights, field medical outside coming in from publications, from posters, even social media. All these can be grouped together and aggregated in a way that will enable us to communicate that in the wider organization and not just within the medical affairs organization.
Yeah, and what we do here is incredibly important for what we do with insights from commercial teams in the future. We're starting here because we have quite a large data set that we can start to work with, but that learning with the legal and compliance is going to become essential for that further data source, which is everything that's been brought in by those other field teams, that we don't currently utilize the full knowledge of that today. So I'm just going to finish by asking each of you to give one thing, a useful piece of advice that you'd give to somebody who's looking to either avoid or overcome obstacles in their insight process, insight with a big I.
I can start. Yeah, cross-validate the data. And as a wise person once said, if you build it, they will come. So build a business process around it. Make sure we're doing stuff with it. Take those insights and embed them into the strategy, report them back to whoever gave the insight and close that circle, make it meaningful. But yeah, cross-validate.
I would say be ready to be challenged, but also challenge the opinions and the orthodoxies that were established before. So open the discussion, work through the problems together, and I think we have open communication. We'll be able to improve the way we capture and communicate those golden nuggets throughout the organization.
Thank you.
On technology, we had a lot of discussions about technology. Use technology for insight management, 2 levels, like improve the existing processes and look for new resources of insights. Extremely important.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.